There's been some commotion every now and then happening around town center. I don't know if you've noticed it. A couple times every now and then on a Saturday morning, I'll just be driving, going to a store or going door-to-door evangelism across Aliso with our team, and I'll drive past the town center, and there's a bunch of people just standing at the stop signs. I don't know if you've seen these people. People holding signs. I'm like, dude, I'm just trying to drive around. I don't need people walking up on, doing this whole No Kings protest. You guys know what I'm talking about. You've seen them happening all around, protesting, saying, we don't want a dictator. We don't want an authoritarian leader. We do not want a king in control. And they're going to make it known. Stopping you from going to Trader Joe's. Come on. Maybe not so much. Well, what I think is so fascinating about this, not to jump into the realm of politics, but it's really, if you think about what they are protesting, it's a cry and a protest against authority. We don't want someone to be in charge telling us what we can and cannot do. And I know it's deeper than that, targeting a certain person in the White House and saying he's ruling like a king, and we don't want to be told what to do. Think about how that underlying cry of we don't want someone bossing us around is so widespread and so rampant. From the looting, we don't want people in charge. We can do whatever we want, to at school, when a professor gives an assignment and there is a cry amongst the students, on Thanksgiving break, are you kidding me? Why? Because there's something in us, our sin, that says we do not like other people telling us what to do. I want to be in charge. I don't want there to be a king. Rather, I want to be the king and the captain of my own fate. But as you and I both know, there is a king, and his name is Jesus Christ. His name is not DT, his initials are JC, and whether you want to affirm it or not, the reality is there is a king. His name is Jesus, and we all need to submit ourselves under him. We all need to say, he is the authority, he is the one in charge, and we're going to listen. But as you and I know, there are a lot of people that say, I'm good with the whole Jesus thing. I don't want him to be in charge. Even a lot of people who say, oh yeah, I have intellectual problems with the idea of there being a God. Or, man, the Bible doesn't really seem to be true. Maybe people you've interacted with at our campus evangelism that give all these objections to, this is why I'm not a Christian, this is why I don't want to follow Christ. But really, most of the time, what it comes down to is you don't want someone else telling you what you should and shouldn't do. But every single one of us needs to get to that point where we submit ourselves to Christ. Not where you can have part of my life. Maybe you're someone in this room that says, okay, I'll give Jesus these certain parts of my life, but I'm going to keep some parts to myself. No, Christ needs to be in complete control. Jesus will have no rival. And as we start this Christmas series, as you see the series titled behind me, Born is the King, I want us to look at a character tonight, one who tried and attempted to rival Jesus. Someone who held tightly to his position as king, who held tightly to the throne and to his kingdom, and see the results of what played out. And while a lot of the things about this guy named Herod, as you see titled on your paper, this sermon titled Herod the Jealous King, while many of the things that he does, I don't believe most of us will do, I think a lot of the character qualities that he had that manifested in certain actions that he did, we are tempted to have. So I want us to look at Matthew chapter 2 together. If you want to turn to your Bibles there, please turn there. Matthew chapter 2. But this is going to be a little bit of a different sermon because I want us to look at the life of Herod holistically, because I think it'll give us a better picture of what Matthew 2 is talking about. Probably a familiar passage. If we say, oh, we're going to do a Christmas sermon, you're thinking, oh, Matthew, Luke, that's where we're going to go look at. But I want us to get a better understanding of who this Herod guy was. So I want to give us some history and some story of Herod's life as we pair with this chapter, because I think this chapter and what he does is a reflection of his life as a whole. So let's start with a little bit of background on this guy named Herod. Who was he? Why was he so significant? Let's talk a little bit about that. But before we get to Herod, we need to get a little bit back in history. So in 164 BC, there was Jewish independence. So the Hasmoneans, which were the Jewish population there in the area that we know as Israel, they escaped and revolted against the Seleucid Greeks. So in 164, now the Jews have their independence. They're finally free for a certain period of time. And then in 125, there is this leader of the Hasmoneans, John Hyrcanus I, who down there near the Negev in Beersheba, there's another group that's living down there, a group known as the Edomites. Does that ring familiar? Think back to the Old Testament. There was this sibling rivalry, Jacob and who? Esau. Did they get along? No. Remember Jacob, deceitful, tricking Esau out of certain things. Esau gets angry, almost wants to kill his brother, and then Esau is sent away, but guess what? He becomes a great nation, the nation of Edom. And Jacob, who becomes later named what? Israel. They have this rivalry, this combativeness between them. So Jacob, Esau, Israel, Edom. Well, here we've got Jewish Israel independence right here. And down south in the Negev area, there are the Edomites. And in 125 BC, the Edomites get taken over by the Jewish people, and they get forced into their Judean life. They're forced to be circumcised, to accept Jewish law, and to integrate into their lifestyle. So now they are politically Jewish, they're religiously Jewish, but they are not ethnically Jewish. They're not of their genetics, they are not Jewish by nature. Okay, by outward things, yeah, it may seem like they are, but they're not really. Why? There's this tension that goes back and forth. Well, why does that matter at first? Because guess what? Herod's father is an Edomite. So, there's even this tension that is starting to be built. Well, in 63 BC, there is this Hasmonean civil war that takes place between two brothers vying for the throne, which you're going to see a lot of this theme here tonight, that there's a lot of people trying to get in charge and a lot of civil wars that happen and people getting assassinated. And so there's a civil war between two brothers, Hyrcanus II and Aristobulus II. Aristobulus is the younger brother, but he's ambitious. He's a go-getter. He's taking charge. He's fighting. Well, then the older brother, Hyrcanus, he's kind of weaker. It's like, okay, well, who's going to win out? Oh, it seems like the younger brother is doing better. But then Herod's father, who is an Edomite involved in this Jewish civil war, he's an influential person. So he sees this weak brother and he says, I've got an opportunity right here. I can be the driver behind. Okay, yeah, here's this Jewish guy. We'll have him be in charge, but really, I'm the engine behind this whole thing. So he gets behind Hyrcanus, the weaker older brother, as this civil war is taking place and becomes a key advisor and starts becoming an influential person to the Jews. This is Herod's father, Antipater. Well, in 63 BC, Rome, which if we're looking at the map is over this way, they're expanding, they're taking over, and they start coming over into where this civil war is taking place. And now the brothers are saying, well, if we get Rome on our side, guess what? We're going to win. So the two brothers, they're appealing to this general named Pompey, who is showing up, and they're trying to get him, woo him on their side. It seems like Pompey is a little put off by Aristobulus, this younger, kind of brash brother, a little too ambitious. But you know who convinces General Pompey in Rome to take the side of Hyrcanus, the weak older brother? This key guy named Antipater, who is Herod's father. So he convinces Rome, say, hey, take our side right here. And guess what? Now Rome is really in charge of the area. Hyrcanus ends up winning the civil war, but really now Judea and these Hasmoneans are really just a client state under charge by Rome. And guess what? Antipater starts to get some power. In 47 BC, he is appointed by Julius Caesar, who's in charge of Rome. He's appointed to a leadership position. And guess what? His son, Herod, 25 years old, is now governor of Galilee. So up there on the top, Galilee. So now Herod, at 25 years old, not much older than you guys, he's now in charge of Galilee. Why was he appointed there? Because of his father. Because his father proved himself to be a shrewd sort of businessman, making deals. Herod quickly crushed down opponents when people try to, cause a dissension and to overthrow. He was quick to shut them down. And is backed by this guy named Mark Antony after Julius Caesar dies. And they like Herod because he provides some stability in the region, as opposed to a lot of upheaval. Rome's just like, no, if we're charged this area, let's just have there be peace. And Herod provides that. Well, in 43 BC, Herod's father gets poisoned by a rival. It's like a lot of turmoil. If you're trying to go for the throne in this age, like at this period of life, in this space in the world, like do it at your own risk. By this guy named Malichus, who is most likely a Jew and doesn't really like Antipater because he's pro-Rome, because he's an Edomite. There's that tension right there. And so he poisons Antipater. Think about Herod. You're like, man, all this to take some power. My father now poisoned, killed. Shortly after, 40 BC from the east, this group called the Parthians, they invade now Rome, which is in charge of this whole area. They invade Rome and capture Jerusalem. So much so that Herod says, I need to run. I need to flee. I got to get out of here. So where does he go? He goes to Rome headquarters. He says, hey, we need some help. My family has always supported you. These Parthians that have come in from the east, they've taken us over. I've proved myself loyal. Help me take them down. So at 40 BC, Herod is appointed as king of Judea. Galilee up in the north, Samaria, and then Judea in the south. So Herod is titled King of Judea, also known as King of the Jews. A title given by Rome to Herod. This guy, he's now King of the Jews. We'll back him. We'll support him. So he starts up in Galilee as they send him back, but he's got to go on this tirade to overthrow and to take it over. And after this brutal campaign, he secured full control of Judea by 37 BC. Herod is king. So this is just part of the story. We'll get more into it in a second. But notice how much there's these people coming in and overthrow here, and a lot of this politics taking place, and people being assassinated, and fights taking place. And I mean, it's a tumultuous thing to be in a leadership position politically back here in the turn from BC to AD. Now I want you to look back now, knowing this about Herod, a little bit of his background. Now let's read Matthew chapter 2, and let's start in verse 1. Matthew chapter 2. It says, now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem, just right outside of where Jerusalem is, right in that southern section, Bethlehem. Jesus is born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king. Behold, wise men, these powerful, influential people from the east, possibly Persians, maybe Asians, former possibly Babylonians, they're coming from the east. Well, who came from the east before? The Parthians. Did they come peacefully or not? They didn't. So there's these wise men who came from the east, and they come to Jerusalem, and they're bringing this message. What's the message? Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? Do you feel like the knife that's going into Herod's heart right there? Like, he's like, no, I'm King of the Jews. Oh, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? Oh yeah, ethnically, nationally, are you King of the Jews? No. Why? Because he's an Edomite. Jews didn't like that he was in charge because they had this tension. And so he's like, this person born King of the Jews. Here's another political threat. Someone coming after my throne. They say, for we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, it seems like it's secondhand. Seems like it wasn't necessarily they were before him, but he hears about these rumblings. He was troubled. Another word for that is terrified. You might think, well, he should be angry. No, yes, I'm sure part of that is anger, but it seems like there's a real fear in him. Why? Maybe in the back of his head, does he know that I am not the real King of the Jews? So now here he's afraid. There's this threat. There's this rival that's come, and he's troubled. Goes on, in all Jerusalem with him. So why are all the Jews terrified as well? Well, as we'll see, Herod was quick to take brutal action against those who he opposed. So I think they're fearful, like, what is Herod going to do next? To take out his political opponents. And he was troubled. He was fearful. You see, if you put yourself in Herod's shoes, your father's been politically assassinated. For you to take the throne, you've had to, have all these maneuvers by your father and go appeal, and there's all this turmoil. But within him, he thinks, and clearly gladly accepts this title as King of the Jews. Look at me. I'm in charge. I'm the king. I'm reigning. But what often comes with that, especially in this time, is a lot of looking behind you. Who's coming after me? Put it like this for point number one. I want us to see the pride fueling Herod's paranoia. In many commentaries, in many historians, Herod is constantly labeled as paranoid. Why? Because he's always thinking someone is out to get me. And when you think, hey, I'm in charge, I'm in control, I'm the one who's leading, and it builds up this ego inside of him, saying, hey, well, no one should be out to oppose me. Well, when things start moving and you see, they're out to get me, you become super paranoid. And often what fuels paranoia is pride, thinking it's all about you. Because when they say, where is come the King of the Jews, that's like a direct attack on him because of that animosity between the Edomites, which Herod is, and the Jews. Jews don't like him. And the Edomites don't have a great relationship with the Jews. Conflict with each other. We see that in Genesis. We see that in the book of Obadiah. Obadiah is a prophet who was sent to Edom to prophesy against them because they were happy when Israel and Judah were getting taken over. When they were getting sent into exile, they were laughing. They were kind of arrogant about it. So Prophet Obadiah gets sent to them and say, hey, be careful. Like, you're going to fall down too. And even the prophet, this is years before, calls out Edom for their pride. And I think this one verse in Obadiah 1:3 characterizes King Herod. Obadiah 1:3 says, "The pride of your heart has deceived you, you who live in the clefts of the rock, in your lofty dwelling, who say in your heart, who will bring me down to the ground?" I mean, think about it. This is the Edomites. They're looking at the exile, and they're saying, look at weak people. Who's going to bring us down? Well, now think, not too far later, here's Herod, who's in the throne. He's already survived. Some people trying to take out his head. You think there's some pride in Herod? Absolutely. I mean, his name is Herod the Great, which wasn't anything he selected. It was later given to him. But I think partly why it's given to him is, it's how he saw himself. His pride. He knows the king will come from David's lineage in 2 Samuel 7. That's even what Matthew 1 points out, how Jesus is from the lineage of David. And now here he sees this Jesus as a threat to his throne. Pride makes you overestimate yourself, thinking, I got to stay on top, got to put down people that are against me. Pride makes you fear losing control. You become suspicious of other people. You see threats that aren't there. And you start to isolate yourself, as we see true in Herod's life. And I don't think any of you are going out trying to take out your political, rivals. But can pride in your life lead to being paranoid? I was thinking even paranoia in general. I think more and more people are just paranoid. Think everything's out to get them. Well, where does that even come from? They're out to get me, or everyone's trying to take me down. Well, one is it's a pride. Because why? You're only thinking everything's about you. Why is everyone all out to get me? The whole system, how it's set up, is against people that are paranoid. Where does that fuel from? It fuels from a pride, thinking about yourself and you alone. We see that in Proverbs 28, verse 1. The wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion. So people who are doing the right thing, righteous, they're confident, they're self-assured, not in an arrogant way, but it's like, no, I'm not worried about who's out to get me. But guess what? When you're living in wickedness, you're fleeing because you think, oh man, something's to get me. Become all paranoid. I think that's true of Herod. His paranoia comes from his pride, thinking that I'm in charge, I'm the king, I should have no rival. I'm the ruler. Don't be proud like Herod. Well, next, after he takes charge in 37 BC, now Herod needs to, lay some groundwork with the Jewish people that are living in the area. So he wants to start winning favor of them. So what does he do? He gains a Jewish allegiance through marriage to this lady, Mariamne. This is a Jewish princess. So he's saying, hey, I'm going to marry into this family to try to, win some points with the Jewish people that I'm in charge of as king of the Jews. He's starting to, take things into his hands, starting to plot a little bit, starting to, how can I get more power? Well, shortly after this, in Rome, there is this civil war that takes place. This guy, Mark Antony, who's in charge of the Roman Empire, who Herod supported and who he titled as King of the Jews, is now have a little bit of a threat by this guy named Caesar Augustus. You ever heard of that guy before? Oh, wow, another guy as we look at the account of Jesus' birth. There's this civil war that takes place, and Herod's backing this guy named Mark Antony, but guess what? He gets defeated by Caesar Augustus. So Herod's like, uh-oh. That's not going to look good for me. You were supporting the opposition. Rome's way bigger than you. So what does he do? He swallows his pride a little bit. He says, all right, well, how can I try to keep my position? So what does he do? He goes and approaches Caesar Augustus. Frankly, he admits his loyalty. He says, yeah, I was loyal to Mark Antony. But he says, hey, can I show the same loyalty to you that I did to the other guy? And guess what? Caesar Augustus admired his boldness and kept him as king, saying, I wish there were more people like Herod. It's like, look at that. The plot, I don't know what Herod was thinking. I think part he was going saying, I might die. My life might be on the line. He could kill me. But guess what? He's saying, what can I do to maybe keep my throne? And so he says, hey, can I show you the same loyalty that I did to your opponent? And he says, sure, I'll let you stay in charge. So he shifts his allegiance from Antony to Caesar Augustus. And he later honors him by sending him many gifts and naming things after him, all sorts of things. But Herod is still paranoid that everyone's out to get him. He is paranoid of the Hasmoneans, saying they don't like that this Edomite is in charge. Well, who is a Hasmonean that's close to him? His wife. One of his many. Allegedly had 10 plus wives. So what does he do? Herod executes his wife because he's paranoid that she's plotting with the Jewish people to overthrow my throne. Crazy. That marriage did not last super long at all. Executes his wife. Executes also his brother-in-law, saying they're plotting to come out to get me. And his brother-in-law, there's a historical account. He's like, well, they can't know, the people can't know that, hey, I killed my brother-in-law. So what he did is they went out to, a body of water and almost like on a vacation with him and some of his friends, and they invited his brother-in-law, and I guess the leaders didn't usually go into the water. I guess I was beneath them, but they were like, oh, let's go in the water. And they were like, I don't know, just looking like they were having a fun time, and then they held down this teenage 20-something-year-old brother-in-law until he drowned, killed him. Why? Because pride, thinking you're all that, leads to paranoia, saying everyone's out to get me, and now I need to start taking people out. My wife, brother-in-law. Well, he also did more things. He did massive building projects. Herod was mainly known as Herod the Great because of some incredible things that he built. One, to build admiration from Rome, to say, wow, this guy is doing good stuff. He's building stuff, but also partly to win Jewish favor still. He's plotting. He's trying to get people to like him and to back him and to keep his power. He's plotting. What did he build? One thing he built was, maybe you've heard of this, called Masada. It's a cliff fortress that overlooked the Dead Sea. It's this fortress city built on top of a plateau. Imagine being an opponent trying to come in and take down. It's good luck with that. Storm the castle, 7.0 right there. Good luck. Masada was one thing that he built. Another thing, Herodium, which is a palace fortress. As you can see, mainly living quarters up there on the top of that little dome right there. And he also built Caesarea Maritima, which is this seaport city named after Caesar Augustus in honor of him, which had a lot of things: aqueducts, a theater, deep water harbor. This guy was prolific in terms of getting things done in all sorts of ways, either positively here in the things that he built and then negatively in other things. But the thing that he is most famous for and most known for is the Jerusalem temple expansion. He made the temple way bigger than it was before. You can think of Solomon's temple, which was really small, and then that was torn down, and then it was rebuilt by Zerubbabel after the exile, and it looks kind of like what is in that picture right there, but then Herod took it to the next level, and he expanded it. He built this temple mount around it, which was 36 acres, or 26 football fields. That's how large that square footage is. This guy is a prolific builder, getting things to be done. Considered his greatest achievement, he built massive retaining walls with these huge stones that caused people, even the disciples in the Gospels are looking and they're like, what large stones there are. That was Herod's work. employed thousands of skilled workers to build it. Even critics admitted that the work that he did was extraordinary, was huge. What's still there that doesn't stand anymore, except for some of the western wall or the Wailing Wall that you probably have seen, and the lower level of those stones were ones that were put there by Herod, and obviously the Dome of the Rock, which is behind it, where the Temple Mount used to stand. So here's Herod. He is a confident, he is a bold, he is an ambitious go-getter, do what needs to be done. Let's go back in our passage in Matthew chapter 2, verse 3. He hears that there's this statement of there's this king of the Jews that is born, and he's troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. He's fearful. This can't happen. So what does he do? He starts scheming like he always did. When Caesar Augustus took over, he starts scheming to say, oh, what can I do to keep my power? When he needs to get more loyalty from the Jews, and he marries into and he starts building things. Why? He's scheming to do what he does. So what does he do? He does what he always does. Verse 4, he assembles all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, the religious leaders, the Sanhedrin. He pulls them together, and he inquired of them where the Christ, the Messiah, was to be born. They told him, in Bethlehem of Judea. For so it is written by the prophet. And here is a quote from Micah 5:2. It says, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, small little town, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. So they say, hey, we looked at the Old Testament, we studied it. It seems like these magi who came over, they weren't Jewish, but it seems like they were God-fearers because they want to come in and worship this king of the Jews, probably through influence of Daniel and the Babylonians. So then the scribes, they look and say, well, here in Micah 5:2, it says this guy, this Messiah, this Christ, is to come from Bethlehem. He will be a ruler, and he will shepherd my people. Verse 7, then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him. Oh, look at that. Herod's excited. He can't wait. It's like, yeah, let me know. The born king of the Jews. Yeah, let's do it. It's like, we all know. No. Okay, Herod. Sure. Thank you. But what does he do? In his pride leads to paranoia, which leads to terrified, this panic, and now he starts plotting. He comes up with this plan. Hey, why don't you, okay, they says it's supposed to come from Bethlehem. Okay, yeah, wise men. When you go find him, let me know. Point number 2, I want you to notice the panic that drives Herod's plotting. Each of these words, I want you to see this downward spiral in Herod's life, which where does it start with? A pride, leading to paranoia and panic. What does he start doing? He starts plotting like he always does. Oh, how can I do what I can to keep power? He will do anything to keep his power and squelch his rivals, such as this so-called king of the Jews. The sin continues, needs a cover-up, and this further spiral. But if only he knew, Herod knew, what Psalm chapter 2 said. I want you to turn to Psalm chapter 2. Maybe you've never thought about this being a psalm about Christ. That Jesus is all throughout the Psalms. And if Herod just had read Psalm 2, he would have known to, hey, don't try to conspire against this Jesus. Try not to rival against him. Why? Psalm chapter 2 says, why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. anointed. It's the word Messiah. It's the word Christ. So all these nations, they're conspiring. They're plotting to come against who? Jesus. Let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. Oh man, God must be terrified. Herod's out. The nations are plotting against him. Verse 4, he who sits in the heaven laughs. The Lord holds them in derision. Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, as for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. Repeating of 2 Samuel chapter 7. I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with the rod of iron and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. God's not threatened. Christ isn't threatened. Verse 10, he says, now therefore, O kings, be wise. This is what Herod should have listened to. He should have listened to, O kings, be wise. Be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son. What is that? Kiss. Submit. Who's the Son? Christ. Submit yourself to Christ, lest he be angry and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. If he had just read Psalm 2, he would have known, hey, this plotting against Jesus, against the Son, against the Lord's anointed one is a dire thing. Verse 11 and 12 is something that Herod needs to hear, but every single person needs to hear. Verse 11, serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son. Whether you're Herod, whether you're someone living today, we all need to submit ourselves to Christ. If we don't, you have the pride saying, I want control, I want to be in charge. You'll fall down this same slippery slope that Herod did. Even if your outward actions aren't the same, it's the same prideful heart beneath it. Notice the panic that drives him to start plotting, start scheming. How can I take out this born king of the Jews? Well, Herod's story continues between 13 and 5 BC, which this is all before the account in Matthew, by the way, but I just think each of these sections parallels how his life goes. He keeps becoming more and more paranoid. People are out to get him. And between 13 and 5 BC, he executes 3 of his sons for fear of them overtaking the throne. If you see here up on the right, I put these two together because I think it's so fascinating how this one points out all the lineage of Herod the Great and how we see these kings and rulers in the future. King Herod Agrippa I and his relation with Peter and James, and then, how John the Baptist, Salome asked for his head because he rebuked that. Like he's the start of this huge dynasty that we see all throughout Scripture. But who does he kill? Herod the Great. Well, he killed wife Mariamne the first. Well, then he gets more suspicious. So Alexander and Aristobulus, guess what? Dead. Wife Doris, Antipater, 5 days before he dies. So this is probably after the account of the Magi. 5 days before he dies, he says, Antipater is out scheming against me, kills that son too. 3 of his sons. Jewish historians put it this way: Herod did not spare even his dearest friends. He tortured many of them and ordered them to be slain, for he suspected that they had conspired with his sons. And Caesar Augustus has this noteworthy line that he says about Herod, and he says it's better to be Herod's pig than his son. Why? Because Herod was trying to appease the Jews by upholding, be kosher, don't eat the pigs. But guess what? What will he do to his own sons? Have them killed. So it's kind of comical, if I can use that, and what Caesar's saying, hey, you'd rather be Herod's pig than his son. Why? Better chance of staying alive. Crazy. And then 5 to 4 BC is where we come to the birth of Jesus and the Magi stories. All this gives you just some more context of, like, why is Herod doing, when you look at, oh, Herod, like, that's, like, okay, yeah, there's this king that was mad. It's like, look at what all this guy did. Hope it gives more richness to what Matthew chapter 2 says and understanding about it. Let's keep reading. Matthew chapter 2, verse 9 says, after listening to the king, the Magi, the wise men, they went on their way. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was, where Christ is. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. I mean, it's ironic that some of the first people to recognize Jesus for who he is and affirm him are not the Jews, which becomes a story throughout the Gospels that he's rejected by his own people, and rather the outsiders are the ones who are quick to accept him. True here. Verse 11, and going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. I'm sure they had some suspicion before, being like, oh, should we go tell Herod? But they're warned in a dream. Drop down to verse 16. We'll get back to 13, 15 in a second. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked, which notice how the whole story of the Bible comes together. Herod is what? An Edomite. Jesus, Jewish. Go back, Jacob, Esau. Who tricked who? Jacob deceived Esau. The Edomite got tricked again. Herod saw he'd been tricked by the wise men. He becomes furious. He becomes enraged. This idea behind it is like he lost all control. I mean, like he had really any self-control before, but like the little that he had, he's out. And he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years older or 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. So he had to put some parameter on. So like, okay, well, based off when they say they saw the star, how old must the child have been? But we think that he estimated probably high because Herod had no problem doing overkill. So Jesus might have not even been a year old yet, possibly. But he's like, hey, let's just go 2 years old to make sure we wipe this all out. Before you think this is like 10,000 people that end up being killed, it was probably around the 20 number because of the region not being the most populated. So, I mean, but still, this decree to kill babies. Horrific. Verse 17. But Herod didn't know he was fulfilling prophecy this whole time. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentation. Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be comforted because they are no more. Okay, what does that have to do with anything? Okay, Rachel. Who is Rachel? Anybody? Who was Rachel? A wife of, there we go, Jacob. And guess what was so good to Rachel? She wanted to have kids. There was this rivalry, her, Leah, trying to have a lot of kids, right? And then Rachel finally was able to have some kids. And so now here in Jeremiah 31, when the nation of Israel is being taken into exile, Israel and Judah are being exiled. Here it's saying this is like Rachel crying for her children because they're being taken away. And think of all the moms that, as their sons are getting, and daughters are getting taken to exile. Here she is crying. But it's also credited, obviously, prophetically pointing to here, this mourning over these children that are being murdered by the hands of paranoid Herod. You see the downward spiral? Point number 3. recognize the perversity that culminated in Herod's purge. I mean, see the downfall: pride to paranoia to panic to plotting to this despicable perversion, executing his sons and these infants, and leads to the purge. Why? Because Herod was enslaved ultimately to his own pride. Here's a quote from a Jewish historian describing Herod. It says, "He was a man of great barbarity towards all men equally, and a slave to his passions." I mean, I thought it was so interesting. A slave to his passions. Well, what is that? Slave to sin. That's not written by a Christian. That's not written by Paul right there. But it describes him as a guy, slave to his passions, but a great benefactor to the cities under his dominion, and ambitious to leave great monuments of his reign. It's like, oh, he was great in some ways, but ultimately a slave to his passions. I think even his monuments that he built, it's all built by pride. Like, look at me. Look how great I am. Romans 6, I was going to turn there, but you're going to look at it in small groups. Just a great passage that talks about apart from Christ, we are, as Herod was, enslaved to our sin. You might think you've got control and you can say no, but guess what? You're not able to. You give in. If you're trying to keep the crown on your head and you be in charge and rejecting Jesus and his reign, you're enslaved to your sin. But guess what? There's freedom that comes when we kiss the Son and we submit to Christ. So good. All right, last little bit of Herod's story. In 4 BC, downfall of Herod. So this account in Matthew chapter 2, this is maybe a year, maybe 2 years before Herod dies. So in 4 BC, Herod dies in Jericho, 5 days after murdering his son. Crazy. He did not go down easy. He suffered severe physical ailments. Described like this: he was seized with the distemper, a fever, and an intolerable itching of the whole skin, continual pains in the intestines, tumors of the feet, inflammation of the abdomen, and gangrene of the privy member, breeding worms. Extreme suffering and systemic infection. It's like, rightfully so after, right? He went down hard. His kingdom ended up being divided. Caesar Augustus divided it among 3 of his remaining sons. Archelaus, Antipas, and Philip, giving them different sections, as you can see on the map. But even in his death, he was going down swinging. He had this deathbed order that near his death, he feared, hey, when I die, no one's going to be sad. No one's going to cry. So you know what I want you to do? I want you to go imprison key Jewish leaders, and when you hear that I've died, I want you to slaughter them so that the nation cries, even if they're not crying for me. When I die, kill them so that all Judea will weep, even if it's not for me. Crazy. Thankfully, this edict was never carried out after he died. But look at the fall of this guy. Even in his death, he does not want to submit. He wants to be in charge. But guess what? He can't dethrone Christ. Look back at Matthew chapter 2, 2 sections, verse 13. It says, "And when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, 'Arise, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him.'" I think we even see Herod being almost a type of Pharaoh in the Old Testament, when Pharaoh and the death of the firstborn, and here also with Herod. And then going down to Egypt, verse 14, and he rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod. This is crucial here. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. Out of Egypt I called my son. That's quoting the book of Hosea. So it's like, oh, well, God, here in 4 or 5 BC, he was thrown for a loop because Herod said to go slaughter them. So God had to adjust and say, all right, well, go down to Egypt to get away. It's like, no, guess what? God's not tricked. God's not caught off guard. He knew this years before it even happened. For him, even in Hosea, to say, out of Egypt I called my son, fulfillment of this prophecy. Verse 19 says, but when Herod died, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, rise, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel. For those who sought the child's life are dead. And he rose and took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus, oh, look right there, was reigning over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. He went and lived in a city called Nazarene, so that what was spoken by the prophets might be fulfilled, that he would be called a Nazarene. It's like all throughout this account that's taking place, Herod thinks he's the one in charge, moving all the pieces. But guess what? Even through all the things that he's trying to do to dethrone Jesus, it just keeps fulfilling prophecy, fulfilling prophecy, fulfilling prophecy. Why? Because God's in charge. And those who seek to rival him are going to fall. Point number 4, beware the peril in pretending you can dethrone Jesus. You can't stop Jesus. God uses Herod's evil plan to fulfill prophecy. God's the one guiding all events. If there's just one overarching idea that summarizes these 4 points of what we should learn from the life of Herod, put it this way: be warned by Herod. All who attempt to protect their throne will forfeit their soul. Herod, literally, the throne. No one can have it. I'm in charge. Guess what? From what we tell, it doesn't seem like he ever repented. I think we can tell by his deathbed order. Well, guess what? You might say, well, I'm not a king. I don't have a throne. I'm not trying to kill people. I'm not, having marriages to create allegiances and get people to follow me. But do you want control? Do you want to be in charge? Or have you kissed the Son and submitted to him? One passage I want us to close out with is Daniel chapter 4. I want you to turn there. In Daniel chapter 4, we see a king similar to Herod in many ways. Prideful, thinks he's the man, thinks it's all about me, and he also has a tumultuous fall because of his arrogance. Look at Daniel 4, verse 28. All this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. The king answered and said, is not this great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power, as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty? I mean, you can picture this right now, right? This arrogant king saying, look at all the things that I have built. I mean, I can even think Herod thinking those same things as he's doing these massive building projects. Look at all this. Verse 31, while the words were still in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken. The kingdom has departed from you. You shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and you shall be made to eat grass like an ox. And 7 periods of time shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. Immediately, the word was fulfilled against Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from among men and ate grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven till his hair grew as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like bird's claws. I mean, what a precipitous fall for this king. Just like Herod, as we talk, what a demise, what a peril in the arrogance of thinking, I'm all that. But you know that Herod and King Nebuchadnezzar have a different end. Herod never comes to his senses. He goes down unrepentant, saying, I want control. God graciously, through this humbling of Nebuchadnezzar, gets him to the point of him seeing and coming to his senses. Look at verse 34. At the end of the days of Nebuchadnezzar being this crazy guy, he lifts his eyes to heaven, and my reason, it returned to me. And I blessed the Most High and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing, and he does according to his will among the hosts of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say to him, what have you done? See, he's finally realizing, you think you're in charge? No, you are not. You need to submit to the real, true king. Verse 36, at the same time, my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my majesty and splendor, it came back to him. He got his position. My counselors, my Lord, sought me. I was established in my kingdom, and still more greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are right, and his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble. Have you humbled yourself to the throne of Christ? I think the contrast even between King Nebuchadnezzar and Herod is such a helpful one for us to see and a lesson for us to learn. Don't live your life as your own self-appointed king. Rather, submit your life to the true King of Kings. Let's pray. God, we thank you for this passage in Matthew, and even for the example of Herod, maybe a character that we haven't stopped to really consider much about. We thank you even for many Jewish historians who account and can tell us more of the background behind various people and how they live, to give us a better understanding of your word and the depths and the riches of it. God, I pray that what we would learn tonight is that we need to not want to be the king of our own life, want to be the ones who have total control, but may we be willing to submit ourselves to the throne of Christ and live our lives for him in all areas, not keeping things away from you, but rightly living as a citizen under your kingship. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.